I'm Susan, and today I want to experiment with these dollar store beads. I have never bought beads at the dollar store. I stumbled on these and thought this could be a really good starter pack for somebody who wants to see if they like bead embroidery. The high-end beads and high-end finishes are really an investment. And this is a little to none investment. $5 will probably get you all you need. And some felt thread and a few little rhinestones from my AliExpress haul. I'm going to use the cheapest crystal beads that I bought at my AliExpress haul and see if we can create something beautiful. So let's get started. Now here's the beads that I bought at the dollar store, and they were pretty nice colors and stuff, but they're definitely Chinese beads. They're inconsistent in cut and size. But I still think they'll be nice for bead embroidery, just to give you an idea whether you like this or not. And for ornamental purposes, they're probably fine. As far as my bead weaving with jewelry and stuff, the price point is very different. Here's the smaller packages underneath. And these are really thin. I mean, they've got lots of plastic in between, squishing it so that they only have one thin layer of beads. Now here is just a sampling of the beads I normally work with, and this one is $11.50, this one is $4.50, this one is $12.50, $6.50, $6.75, $3.50. The bugle beads are always a little less expensive. $3.25 and $9.75. They vary by size, by color, by finish. The prices vary greatly, and that's why I say that seed beads are really an investment, because you can spend $400 and fit it in a tiny Ziploc bag. It's a real investment. It's not for everyone, and that's why beadwork jewelry is so expensive, is because you have to buy a big seed bead bottle for every color of each item that you're going to use. So if you don't even use the whole bottle, you still have to buy that bottle for that color. And seed beaders have to really invest thousands of dollars into their palette of colors, and that is why they charge so much. Now, to add a little extra sparkle to this project, I'm going to use some of these crystals that are from my AliExpress crystal haul, so you can see who exactly I got them from. This is from my rhinestone haul. I'm not sure what ones I'm going to use, so I'm just going to show them all to you up front, and we'll see how this ends up. Now, when you're opening these packages, they are taped on literally all four sides. So make sure you take your scissor and go around the back and cut up all of that tape, because if you just pop this the wrong way, these beads could separate and be everywhere. So then flip it over and try, and when you go to lift it up, just tap it. There's a lot of static cling, and once again, these beads will be everywhere, and they're quite a nuisance to pick up and separate, so it's just nicer if they're separated to start with. Now, this is the difference I found in buying the 2 packages of green. I would have just bought the one if they didn't have the big label over it so I could see, because basically this has almost the same colors as this one, just has a few extra. And they're all sold by weight, so it's not like this has any more beads in it, it's just spread out more. But I think I would have just bought these 3 trays had I known, so just to share that with you. Now, I'm starting off with an Inchie, which is just 1 inch by 1 inch piece of felt. And I am going to put one of my rhinestones in the center here. And you can sew it. They have these little casings that have a little hole in them. But I find E6000, just a little dot, is my friend. It just makes it sit in the center, that I keep it right in the center when I'm sewing it. Now, if you don't have this, don't worry. You can just sew it on like a button. No big deal. I just find this little trick to help a whole lot in just keeping it centered where I want it, exactly like right there. Japanese seed beads, these are actually Japanese. And these are the dollar store seed beads, which are probably China. And they're not terrible. I mean, they're still pretty, but they're very inconsistent in size. So when you're working with these, they're gonna take a little bit more of your time, because you have to find ones that are similar to put along the edge here. because if you get the ones that are one's long, one's tall, and one's short, you'll really see the difference here. So when you're doing this, it's not that you can't do it, you just have to be cautious of where you're using what beads. Just like around my rhinestone here, some were shorter, some were longer. The inconsistencies are a trademark of the Chinese beads, and the consistencies are the trademark of the Japanese and the Czech beads. So that's why people flock towards certain beads more, is because of the consistency and size. When you're weaving, it's easier. But if you're just doing embroidery, you could use these, they're fine. I wouldn't use these in my jewelry work, but for decorative ornaments and things, I think they're fine. Now, since I'm using this Inchi for ornamental purposes, I want to add some fringe to it just to switch it up. You could also use it on a board. But to add the fringe with these dollar store beads, it's a little bit more challenging because they're not consistent. I'm going out the bead that I have at the edge here, and let me flip this over so you can see the front. And I'm adding just these little bugle beads because my selection here is extremely limited. This is what came in the package of green beads. And actually the bigger package seems to have more. Now I'm just starting with the light from going from light to dark, and I'm looking for beads that are a little bit more consistent, because as you can see, this one's broken, this one's shorter, this one's longer. They're all different sizes, so you're going to have to play around with these a little bit. And I'm just whoop, that one's real wonky. I'm just trying to find the ones. You can see this one's got like a funny side cut to it. You have to really play with these. It doesn't mean that they're terrible, that you can never work with them for ornamental purposes. I think they're fine. I would never use them in jewelry because they're just not detailed enough, but if you're just making ornaments, I think a group or just person alone, these are fine. They're actually quite pretty. The colors are beautiful. I'm sure I'll get someone. Now I'm using one of these crystals at the bottom, and this of course is an AliExpress crystal because you can see the hole is sideways, so we can't use that one. Here's one that has a consistent hole straight down the center. That's a lot better. Now, since these beads are all so different sized and wonky, at the end here whoops, that one's bad. I'm using 3 beads, and I'm using the darker one, the lighter one, and the darker one. And the reason I'm doing that is when you put it at the end on the fringe, it kind of makes it busier. If you notice over here that it looks more consistent. And what we're trying to do here is literally fool the eye and not point out our mistakes and just do whatever we have to work with. I will skip those 3 beads at the end and just go through the crystal, and that will leave me this nice little teardrop, and I will continue to add my fringe till I decide it's enough. I want to add a hanging piece so that you can hang this onto something, and the easiest way to do it is I'm using what I have the most left of. I've tried to use this entire tray just on this one piece so that you can see if you only bought one tray of beads what you could do with it, and this lighter green seems to be the color that I have the most of left, so that's the one I'm going to use. And I'm just basically going to take 20 beads, I'm going to take one of these crystals in the middle. You know what, I think maybe I'll even make it look a little more decorative. We'll take 2 of these green ones on each side. And as you can see with these other darker beads, how wonky they are. The sizes are a little off. So rather than worrying about the fact that the sizes are off, just try to pick the ones that match the best to you visually. And that will help fool the eye when you see it all together, because when you see this piece done, you're not going to realize what size the beads were. It's just a matter of you can't do some of the more tailored pieces with these type of beads, but you can do lots of fun things with these. And I'm going to add 20 more beads on this other side. And now I'm going to go back through that original hole that I came in at the top here. Now you can go back through and reinforce it, or you can add another strand of beads and just go through this crystal. I think I'm going to go back through and add another strand of beads, just 20 on each side, and come back down. Since I have a little extra room over here, I like to add this little bit of a fringe around it. You can see it creates more of a frame, another optical illusion that what's wrong with these beads you won't notice. And all I have to do to add these is you can add 3 beads. Now I'm taking one of these bugle beads, a center bead, which would be close to an 11, and another one of the bugle beads. And it's easier if I turn it over because it gets too distracting. I'm just coming out of one of these beads and I'm going into the one next to it. And that will create this little picot. Now, that is what you get from using the bugle beads. You use the regular beads, you can get this type of a picot. So you can get 2 completely different looks just by using different kinds of beads. Another simple and interesting technique, I just have this marguerite bead that I've made out of a lentil, and I'm adding just these little fringes. Let me see if I can, yes, you can see them when I hold that back. And to make this fringe, I'm just taking 2 of these shorter bugles, a green, kind of like a size 11, and then 2 more of the shorter bugles. And I'm just kind of going over about the size of an 11 seed bead. So I'm just leaving a little space in between there. And what it does is it creates this long kind of leafy piece. And I'm just going to continue around the flower twice because I've got enough beads to do that, and come back and show you how pretty that looks. And now I've added that second row, and I used a different color. I have these beads that are left of different shades of these kind of short bugles. These are a little longer bugle. These are just like little cut ones. And these are a little smaller than an 11, a little larger than an 11. So I'm just working with what I have. I want to show you what you can do with just these dollar store beads. And they're not my favorite beads, but they actually are really pretty when you get them put together. To create all this texture I have on here, I have added the 5 beads that you saw that I was originally doing in both circles. And then I added the 1 little bugle, a center round bead, and another bugle along the edges to make it a little thinner there. And after that, I just wanted to add a little texture that looked like little buds. So I took the darker pink, the lighter pink, and the darker pink, and I'm just inserting it in between here to get that nice little kind of almost a mossy texture around that big flower. Now here is the original piece that we started with. You watched me install the rhinestone, just put it on. And I didn't show you how to bead all around it. I have another video, which is Bead Embroidered Inchies, that I show exactly how to do that. So I thought it was kind of repetitive. But I wanted to show you how just using these dollar store beads, you could create something beautiful. You don't need to have very expensive beads for ornamental work. You can use whatever you can find. And in this one, I used the blue and the greens, but I opened this green package and I opened this larger green package. Because they had labels running across them, I couldn't tell. These are the same beads that are in here. There's just a few more beads in here than there were in this one, so I decided to just use the larger one. And I wanted to see how much I could get out of just this larger one, and I got quite a bit. And I ended up just using mostly the pink one, which this is kind of a little bit of a garish pink, and some of the color was coming off on my hands on some of these, so definitely not for jewelry, but for ornaments they're really pretty. I love the bright colors. And I used mostly the greens just because I love green, and that was an easy package. Now, the blues I only used in this one, and the only reason I only used the blues in this one was they're mostly like a size 6 bead and the bugle beads. And I started to think after I was beading, what could you do if you could only find one package of these, like this green package? If that's all you could find, is that enough to make something? Here's your answer. Here's the one that I created just using the green beads, the rhinestone, and some crystals, and I think it's quite beautiful. It's got some beautiful bright green and darker green, a lot of contrast and a lot of depth, and pretty hard to believe that this is just the beads from the Dollar Tree. So You can create things with inexpensive beads. It will take you a little bit longer. These take a little bit more of a challenge to look at and get them all even. So all of these beads in the package are not even. You just have to go look through them carefully and find ones that match up. That's the only difference. And adding the pink beads, I created this one with some polymer clay beads at the end and the polymer clay flower. And this is just simply adding those bugle beads up at the top in that V formation, 3 beads just around the flower. It gives that nice mossy look. I added these darker green beads in pairs of 2 because they're a little wonky in shape. I found that making them go in different directions, you couldn't tell. So there's ways to disguise things, and you can see when I put 2 strands of beads around the top loop, it makes it less obvious that they're wonky. So I find adding extra beads, like I added extra small fringes, if I separate this in between my larger fringes, I normally don't always do that. But for something like this, it really disguises the irregularities in the beads. So just little tricks you can use to make things work for you. And another little Inchie that I've just added this mossy little texture. You saw how I added that around the flower, and I just continued with a double fringe. See, there's a shorter fringe inside of this, and it kind of hides those wonkiness of the beads, and some polymer clay flowers. So you can create lots of neat things. If you're not into beading and you don't have a big stash, this is a really good way to see if you like this. And here's my last one, and it's got almost a pinwheel design. I started out by putting a different color bugle bead in each corner and building it up in a stack, and it started to turn into this pinwheel design sort of naturally, so you don't have to do a whole lot of effort to get something really interesting. Now, I do have a double stack of, let me spread that, yeah, there we go, a double stack of fringe so that it looks fuller. And on the back, most of you are probably wondering, what did I use to put on the back? I just used felt. If you happen to have leather or any type of fabric that doesn't fray, it will work perfectly. Felt seems to be the easiest, most inexpensive product available, and it really finishes it off nicely. Or you could just put 2 of them back to back if you wanted to do that. But I was trying to get more bang for my time. And I just wanted to show you that bead embroidery, it doesn't have to be a huge investment. These are just dollar store beads. I've totally used $3 worth of seed beads here. I didn't even open more than 3 packages, just to give you an idea of what you can do with a minimum amount of money. So it's more about creativity than how much you invest in things. I hope this gets you inspired, and maybe you'll try some bead embroidery. Thanks for watching.